They called Dante Moretti the devil of the Lower East Side. In 60 seconds, 8 of his own men were going to draw their guns. Not on me. On him. He just didn't know it yet. Tonight, in his glass-walled penthouse 40 floors above Manhattan, surrounded by every made man who had sworn him loyalty, he was going to look at me, really look at me, for the very first time. And he was going to call me just a waitress. That's what he saw. Black uniform, white collar, dark hair pulled tight, wine bottle held low against my hip the way the staff was trained. A girl hired 3 months ago who said yes, sir, and no, sir, and disappeared between his fingers like steam. He had called me sweetheart twice. He had called me girl 4 times. He had never once asked my name. Tonight, at his engagement dinner, surrounded by 26 of the most dangerous men in New York, he was going to mock me in front of all of them. He was going to make me kneel. He had 60 seconds left to decide what kind of man he wanted to be. He used them badly. The dining room of the Moretti penthouse was the kind of place that made men forget how to be careful. 40 floors above the city, every wall was glass. Manhattan burned beneath us in a grid of gold and white and the distant red of brake lights. Snow was falling, soft and steady, the way it falls in films. A long black walnut table ran the length of the room, set for 30, candles down the center in silver holders, white linen, white roses, the family crest, a wolf with a knife between its teeth, embroidered into every napkin in dark crimson thread. The men around the table wore tailored black, watches that cost more than the apartments their soldiers lived in, rings that meant blood. The women wore silk and diamonds and silence. Most of them anyway. Camilla Bianchi, the bride-to-be, had been laughing too loudly for an hour, the kind of laugh that said, please notice me, please love me, please don't make me regret this. Her father had sold her like a bond for peace between 2 families that had spent 15 years killing each other in the boroughs. She would not survive the year. I had read the commission's notes twice. At the head of the table sat Dante Moretti. 38 years old, 6'2", black hair cut short on the sides, longer on top, slightly mussed because he never let anyone fix it for him. Jaw shadowed with 2 days of stubble, he wore the way other men wore cologne. The collar of his white shirt was open enough to show the top of the cathedral inked across his collarbone, a black ink Madonna with her hands folded in mourning, blood dripping from her wrists. The right side of his neck carried a single Roman numeral, XVII. The age he was when he killed his first man. His left arm was a full sleeve no one outside this room had ever seen, hidden tonight beneath a charcoal suit. I had seen it. He liked to roll up his sleeves at the bar of the Veritas after midnight when he thought no one was watching. A snake, a rosary, a list of names down the inside of his wrist. Mine was not yet on it. He held court like a man who had never been told no. He poured wine for himself and let the staff stand and watch. He tipped his glass at his consigliere, Luca Romano, and Luca smiled the way men smile when they are calculating the weight of a body. He laughed at his underboss, Marco, who told a long, ugly story about a man who had borrowed money and tried to flee to Florida. The men laughed. The wives laughed half a beat later. Camilla laughed with her hand pressed to her chest, as if she were trying to hold her ribs in place. I stood against the wall behind Dante, 3 steps to his right, holding the second decanter of the Sassicaia he had ordered. I did not move. I did not breathe heavily. I watched the room the way my father had taught me to watch a room when I was 9 years old. 26 made men. 11 of them I had personally identified, in 3 months, as men who would never raise a hand against me when they understood whose daughter I was. 6 of them carried weapons under the table. I had counted the bulge of every holster as they sat down. The exits were the elevator behind me, the kitchen door to my left, and the terrace beyond the glass, too far in heels. I did not need an exit. The exit tonight was Dante's. I had not always wanted him dead. The night the boy came in from the snow, I had been working the late shift behind the Veritas bar. The kid was 9, maybe 10, jacket too thin, lips the color of a bruise. He had walked in off the street because he had seen the lights and he was cold. The bouncer had moved to throw him out. Dante had looked up from his Negroni and said, very quietly, don't. He stood up. He took off his charcoal cashmere overcoat, $3,000. I knew because I had seen the receipt, and he wrapped the boy in it. He walked the boy past 20 men who would not meet his eyes, into the kitchen, and he sat down on a steel prep counter and ate a bowl of carbonara with him in silence. The boy is still being fed there, every Tuesday. Dante does not know I know. I had stood in the swinging doorway, and I had watched him with the boy, and I had hated, for a single short moment, the commission for what they had asked me to do. It was the only moment. The other 23 moments, the broken jaws, the missing brothers, the widows whose envelopes had come up short, those did not pull at me at all. But that one did. That one was still pulling at me 3 minutes from now, when he turned in his chair and said you. The hint that I was not what I seemed had been there, of course, for anyone who had been paying attention. Luca had been paying attention. 3 weeks ago, on a Tuesday night at the Veritas, I had been carrying a tray of glasses past the back bar when a drunk capo from the Sicilian side of the family had grabbed my wrist hard enough to bruise. I did not flinch. I did not pull. I set the tray down and very gently, with my free hand, I touched a single point on the inside of his elbow. His fingers opened on their own. He did not understand why. He apologized in 3 languages. I picked up my tray. I kept walking. Luca had been watching from the booth in the corner. I had seen his eyes, and his eyes had known. 2 weeks ago, a glass had broken at the end of the bar. The other waitress, Sophia, had picked up a piece of it and sliced her hand open to the bone. Everyone had panicked. I had not. I had wrapped the wound with a bar towel in a single sure motion, told the bartender which artery to compress, and walked her out to the car the boss called for her without ever raising my voice. When I came back inside, my hands were perfectly steady. Luca had been watching from the same booth. He had not said a word. He had only nodded at me, very slowly, the way a man nods when something has been confirmed. A week ago, I had been topping off Dante's glass at his usual table when he was on the phone in Italian with someone in Palermo. He had been speaking quickly, too quickly for a guest, he assumed, to follow. I had refilled his glass without spilling a drop. He had not seen the muscle along my jaw go still as I heard him say the old man's daughter never came home, did she? Good. He had been talking about me. I had set the bottle down. I had walked away. I had cried for 9 minutes in the staff bathroom with the water running over my hands. Then I had come back and worked the rest of my shift, and at the end of it Dante had tipped me $40 and called me sweetheart and asked if I wanted a ride home. I had said no, sir. I had walked the 11 blocks to my apartment in the snow, and I had called Luca from a payphone, and I had told him, next Friday, the engagement dinner. He gets one chance. Luca had said only one word. Understood. It happened like this. Dante was on his 4th glass of wine. Camilla had gone to the powder room. Marco was telling another story, this one about a judge in Brooklyn who had not understood, at first, the difference between a suggestion and an order. The men were laughing the way they always did, with their teeth. Dante turned in his chair, lazy, his arms slung over the back of it, and his eyes found me against the wall. You, he said. I stepped forward, 1 step, the way the staff was trained. Yes, Mr. Morty. Come here. I walked the length of the table. 26 men watched me come, some of them with hunger, some of them with boredom, 3 of them Luca and 2 capos at the far end of the table whose names were Antonio Greco and Vincent De Luca, watched me with something else entirely. Something patient, something almost like grief. I stopped beside Dante's chair. I did not speak. Pour, he said. I poured. The wine ran black-red into his glass. I did not spill. I did not tremble. You know what I noticed about you, sweetheart, he said. He was not looking at me. He was looking at his men, performing for them, his mouth pulled into the half-smile he wore when he was about to be cruel for sport. You don't talk. No, sir. Sophia talks. Sophia talks all night. The blonde one before her talked. The redhead from the west side talked. He swirled the wine. You don't talk. No, sir. Why is that? I was hired to serve, sir. A few of the men chuckled. Marco was grinning openly now. Camilla's seat was still empty. You were hired, Dante said, slow and amused, because Luca told me he had a girl who would not embarrass me at a table full of important people. And you have not embarrassed me. You have been, he gestured with the glass, searching for the word invisible. Thank you, sir. It was not a compliment. The laughter at the table was louder this time. He set the glass down. He leaned back in his chair, lazy and amused, and the cathedral inked across his collarbone moved with his breath. You're just a waitress, sweetheart, he said. Let me see you do the one thing a waitress is good for. He turned, finally, fully, and looked at me. Up close his eyes were the dark, tired green of a man who had not been loved properly in a very long time. There was a small white scar at the corner of his mouth that I had never seen because he had never let me close enough. Kneel, he said. 60. The room did not go silent. The room got quieter, the laughter trailing off the way laughter does when men sense, before they understand why, that something has tilted. Sir. On the floor, beside the chair, like a good girl, I want my men to see how well the Veritas trains its staff. Marco laughed once, loud and ugly. No one joined him. I did not move. Did you hear me? Dante said. I heard you, sir. Then, you should ask my name first. The words were very soft. I did not raise my voice. I did not have to. Dante blinked. The half-smile came back, slower this time, more dangerous. Excuse me. My name, you have never asked it. In 3 months, you have never asked it. Before you put a woman on her knees at your engagement dinner in front of your men, Mr. Morty, you should at least know her name. 43. The silence at the table was now total. Camilla had come back from the powder room and was standing in the doorway, frozen, one diamond earring still in her fingers. Marco's hand had drifted, slowly, toward his jacket. Dante looked at me for a long moment, and then he laughed. A short, surprised, almost charmed laugh. All right, sweetheart, he spread his hands. I'll bite, what's your name? I looked at Luca. Luca was already on his feet. So were Antonio Greco and Vincent De Luca, at the far end of the table. So were 3 other men I had not been certain of until this moment, Salvatore Conti and the 2 Russo brothers, but who rose now, slowly, the way men rise in church. 8 made men, standing, in Dante Morti's dining room, at his engagement dinner. Without his permission. My name, I said, is Alina Vital. The wine glass slipped out of Marco's hand. It hit the table edge and shattered. The Sassicaia ran across the white linen and pooled around the silver candlesticks, dark and slow, and for one suspended moment, it looked exactly like what it was about to be. No one looked at it. 12. Vital, Dante said. His voice had gone flat, the amusement was gone from his eyes. Vital. Salvatore Vital was my father. I reached up slowly, with the hand that had been pouring his wine, and I drew the chain out from beneath the white collar of my uniform. The steel was warm from my skin. The signet at the end of it was still cold from the 14 months it had spent in a vault in Palermo. It caught the candlelight as it cleared my collar. A wolf, a knife, his wolf, his knife, the crest of the Capo dei Capi. The man every dawn in this room, including the one in the chair beside me, had answered to for 31 years. The man who had been shot 4 times in the back of the head 14 months ago in a parking garage in Queens by men who had never been found. The men who had never been found, because the commission had not yet decided who would find them. The commission had been waiting. Waiting for a daughter no one in America knew existed to come home from Palermo and walk among them and make her judgment. Antonio Greco crossed himself. Vincent De Luca crossed himself. Camilla, still in the doorway, slid down the doorframe to the floor with her hand pressed against her mouth, and no one helped her up. Marco, Dante's underboss, his oldest friend, the man who had stood beside him at his mother's funeral, closed his eyes the way men close their eyes when the thing they have been afraid of their whole life has finally walked into the room. My father, I said very quietly, sent me to Sicily when I was 11 years old because he loved me. He kept me hidden because he loved me. And when he died, The commission asked me to come back, and they asked me to find the man who had killed him, and they asked me to decide whether the families he built were still worthy of the name he gave them. Dante had not moved. His hand was on the table beside his glass. The hand was very still. "For 3 months," I said, "I have served you wine. I have stood against your wall. I have heard you laugh, and I have heard you grieve, and I have heard you weep alone in your office at 3 in the morning, Mr. Morty, when you thought the building was empty. I have watched you choose mercy when no one was watching, and I have watched you choose cruelty when everyone was. I have made a list." I looked at Luca. He did not kill my father. Luca exhaled, just once, a breath he had been holding, possibly, since the night I touched the capo's elbow at the Veritas. But he humiliated his men's wives at his own table. He has stolen from the books that feed our widows. He has murdered 3 men this year that the commission did not approve. And tonight, Mr. Morty, my voice did not rise, did not shake. Tonight, you asked the daughter of Salvator Vital to kneel beside your chair like a dog, in front of the men who buried her father with their own hands. I let the ring fall back against my chest. That was your 60 seconds. 0. The 8 standing men drew their guns. Not on me. On him. It is a strange thing, to watch a man understand that he is not who he thought he was. Dante Moretti, the devil of the Lower East Side, sat very still in his chair while 8 pistols leveled at his head from 8 different angles in his own dining room. His fiancée had begun to cry, silently, the diamond still in her hand. Marco, his underboss, his oldest friend, the man who had stood beside him at his mother's funeral, had not drawn a gun, but Marco had not stood up either, and the difference was the difference between a man who would die for him and a man who had already begun to grieve him. Dante did not look at the guns. He looked at me. His eyes were not afraid. They were, and this is the part I did not expect, the part I was not prepared for, the part the commission had not warned me about because the commission had never had to feel it. They were clear. As if a long fog had finally lifted. As if he had been waiting, without knowing he was waiting, for someone to walk into his house and call him by a name he had been refusing to answer to. "Elena," he said. It was the first time he had used my name. It was also, I realized, the first time anyone in this room had called me by the name my father had given me in 9 years. I did not let my face change. "Mr. Morty." "I would like," he said, slowly, carefully, the way a man speaks when he understands that every word is now a stone he is laying on the floor of the rest of his life, "to apologize." "To whom?" "To you, to your father, to his memory, to his men." He glanced for the first time at Luca, then at Marco, then at Camilla, poor Camilla, who had been sold to him by a father who had not loved her enough, and his face did something complicated and old. "To her, to all of them." "Apologies," I said, "are not currency at this table." "No," he lowered his eyes, "they are not." I stepped back from his chair. The 8 guns did not waver. Luca looked at me. His face was a question. "Do we finish it?" I did not answer him yet. I walked slowly to the head of the table. I picked up the decanter I had set down. I poured a fresh glass of wine. I set it in front of Dante's place, beside his trembling hand, the way I had poured it for him every night for 3 months. "Mr. Morty," I said. "Yes." "Look at me." He looked. "I have watched you for 3 months. I have seen the worst of you. I have also seen 3 times the best of you. The night the boy came in from the snow, and you put your own coat on him and walked him to the kitchen and told the cook to feed him for the rest of his life. The morning you paid for the funeral of the cleaning woman who died and never told her family who paid. The Tuesday in October when you cried in your office, and I do not know why you cried, but you cried like a man who still has something inside him worth the saving." His jaw worked. He did not speak. "The commission has voted," I said. "The vote was 9-2. You were not to leave this room alive." Camilla made a small noise, like a bird. "I am the 10th vote," I said. "And the 10th vote, by my father's law, breaks any tie and overrides any majority when the daughter of the seat is present." I let the silence work. Tonight you fail, I said. Tonight you will lose your title. Tonight Luca takes your seat as acting Don until the commission convenes again in 1 year. Tonight you will sign the papers Antonio Greco has been carrying in his coat for 3 weeks, transferring your votes, your books, your protections, and your weight on the council to me in trust for that year. His eyes closed. And in 1 year, I said more quietly, if I find you have spent that year becoming the man I saw 3 times instead of the man I saw 23, if I find you have honored my father's name and kept the widows fed and not put your hands on another woman who works for you in a uniform she did not choose, then I will give it back to you. He opened his eyes. And if I have not? Then, I said, you will not need to ask. He looked at me for a long, long time. Then, slowly enough that not one of the 8 guns flinched, Dante Moretti, the devil of the Lower East Side, the man whose name had been whispered in 5 boroughs for 15 years, lowered himself out of his chair and onto one knee beside it. On the floor, the way he had asked me to kneel 3 minutes earlier. He bowed his head. Elena Vital, he said, daughter of Salvator, I accept the judgment of the commission and the judgment of the seat. I am yours for 1 year. The room was so quiet I could hear the snow against the glass. I stepped forward. I rested my hand, very lightly, on the top of his head, the way my father had once rested his hand on the heads of the men he had decided to let live. His hair was soft. He was warm. I could feel his pulse moving against my palm, a steady, careful, unhurried thing, the pulse of a man who knew, for the first time in a long time, that he was alive. Stand up, Mr. Moretti, I said. He stood. We were closer than we had ever been. I could see, finally, the small white scar at the corner of his mouth. I could see the way his pulse moved in the cathedral inked across his collarbone. I could see, in the dark, tired green of his eyes, something I had not been prepared to see at all. He was looking at me the way men in the old stories look at the angel that has come, finally, to either kill them or save them, and who has not yet decided which. Elena, he said again, softer, like he was tasting it. Don't, I said. Don't what? Don't make me feel sorry for you. I won't, he said. I will make you feel something else. I stepped back from him. I did not let my face change. I did not let my hand shake. I did not let any of the 8 men, or the 26 men, or the trembling girl in the doorway with the diamond in her hand see what had happened in my chest in the last 4 seconds. But Luca saw. Luca had known me since I was 4 years old. Luca's eyes, across the long table, went very gentle and very afraid. I left through the elevator. The snow was still falling when I came out of the lobby onto the street. My coat was the same cheap black coat I had worn to my interview at the Veritas 3 months ago. The doorman, who had called me miss every night for 90 nights and had never asked my name either, held the door for me without meeting my eyes. He had heard. Word travels in this city the way fire travels in dry grass. A black car was waiting at the curb. Antonio Greco was driving. Vincent DeLuca was in the passenger seat. The back door opened on its own. I did not get in yet. I stood on the sidewalk, and I let the snow fall on my face, and I let myself breathe for the first time in 3 months. 40 floors above me, in a glass room I would not enter again for 1 year, Dante Moretti was signing his name to papers that gave a stranger the keys to his life. He was thinking of me. I knew he was thinking of me. I could feel it across the floors and the glass and the snow the way you feel a hand on the back of your neck in a dark room. I will make you feel something else. I closed my eyes. I had come home to America to bury a man. I had not come home to be looked at like that. I had not come home to feel the warm weight of a Don's head under my palm and want, for 1 terrible second, to leave my hand there. I had not come home to fall. I got into the car. "Where to, Miss Vital?" Antonio said. His voice was the voice of a man who had carried my father's coffin and had waited 14 months to hear me give an order. "The house on 81st, I said, and Antonio. "Yes, Miss Vital. Tomorrow night, at 10 o'clock, you will drive me back to the Veritas." He met my eyes in the mirror. He did not ask why. He already knew. "Yes, Miss Vital," he said. The car pulled away from the curb. The snow kept falling. 40 floors above the street, behind glass, a man I had judged and spared and not yet finished with was watching the taillights disappear into the white. He had 1 year. I had 1 year to decide whether I was going to give him back his title, or whether I was going to give him something else entirely. I leaned my head against the cold window, and for the first time in 9 years, I allowed myself, very quietly, to smile. The devil of the Lower East Side had called me just a waitress. He was going to spend the next 12 months learning every other name I had.